They called him the Desert Fox, a soldier so brilliant that even his enemies admired him. From the trenches of World War I to the blazing sands of North Africa, Erwin Johannes Eugen Rommel rose to become Germany's most celebrated war general. But behind the medals and victories lay a deadly choice, one that would pit his honor against the most feared man in history, Adolf Hitler. This is the untold story of the man who fought for his country and paid the ultimate price for defying its leader. Erwin Johannes Eugen Rommel was born on November 15, 1891, in the quiet town of Heidenheim in the Kingdom of Württemberg. His father, Erwin Rommel Sr., was a schoolmaster, a man of method and discipline, while his mother, Helene von Lutz, came from a family steeped in local government and civic service. From them, he inherited both a respect for structure and a certain practicality. Yet his childhood was not one of privilege. The Swabian countryside shaped him in ways the capital never could. Here, a boy learned to make do, to repair rather than replace, to understand the value of precision and care. From an early age, Erwin showed a fascination with how things worked. He was not a prodigy in the classroom. His grades were respectable but not exceptional. But he possessed a mechanical curiosity that turned the family yard into a workshop. At 14, he and a friend built a functional glider from wood and fabric, testing it on the hills beyond town. Later, he dismantled and rebuilt a motorcycle, piece by piece, teaching himself the rhythm of engines. These projects, far from idle hobbies, trained him to think in terms of function and adaptation, skills that would later make him a master of improvisation on the battlefield. University was never in reach. His marks were too average, his interests too practical for the academic path. At his father's urging, he looked to the army. In 1910, at the age of 19, he entered the 124th Infantry Regiment as a cadet. The army of the Kaiser was still a place where discipline reigned absolute, but also where a man of talent could rise, even without noble blood. Rommel applied himself with the same methodical attention he had given to engines and gliders. 2 years later, he met Walburga Stemmer, a shop assistant with quick eyes and a warm laugh. Their relationship was passionate, but tangled by differences in background. In 1913, she gave birth to their daughter Gertrude. Rommel promised marriage, but the approach of war and growing attachment to another woman, Lucy Mollin, pulled him in another direction. It was a decision that would leave a shadow. He married Lucy in 1916 while serving at the front, but continued to support Gertrude financially. Walburga never recovered from the heartbreak. In 1928, she took her own life. When the First World War erupted in August 1914, Rommel's regiment was mobilized. In the early fighting, he displayed an instinct for seizing opportunities at Longwy in September. He led a small detachment through a gap in French defenses, outflanking positions and forcing a withdrawal. He earned the Iron Cross, second class. Over the next years, he refined his command style, moving quickly, thinking ahead of the enemy, exploiting even the smallest weakness. In Romania and later Italy, he honed infiltration tactics, sending small units deep into enemy lines, avoiding direct frontal assaults. At Caporetto in October 1917, with just 150 men, he captured the strategic Mount Matager, taking 9,000 prisoners and 81 guns. For this, he received the Pour le Mérite, the empire's highest award for valor. By war's end, Rommel was a captain, remarkable for someone without aristocratic ties. The Treaty of Versailles shrank the army to 100,000 men, but he remained, training recruits, his strictness softened by fairness. He would not order what he would not do himself. By 1919, with the armistice signed and Germany humiliated, Rommel faced a future as uncertain as the nation's. The Versailles Treaty reduced the once proud army to a skeleton force, forbidding tanks, heavy artillery, and an air force. Yet for men like Rommel, the Reichswehr offered stability and a sense of purpose. He was posted as a company commander, focusing on the training of recruits who were often little more than boys, some still with the soft look of adolescence. In these years, Rommel's style began to solidify. Absolute preparedness, sharp drills, but never blind cruelty. He insisted on eating the same food as his men and carrying the same wort on marches. In 1920, he was transferred to Stuttgart as part of the 13th Infantry Regiment. His life began to settle into a rhythm: training exercises, theoretical war games, and occasional deployments to keep civil unrest in check. The Weimar years were turbulent. Uprisings flared, and communists clashed with nationalist paramilitaries. Rommel disliked politics. His interest remained in tactics, in the craft of soldiering. But he understood that Germany's internal battles were as dangerous as any fought abroad. On January 26, 1928, tragedy struck his past. Walburga Stemmer, the woman who had once carried his child and whose life had diverged from his own, took her own life. Their daughter Gertrude was then 17. Rommel, though long married to Lucy, ensured Gertrude was cared for and visited when possible, though he introduced her to others as a niece. The quiet burden of this deception would remain with him. In 1934, Rommel published Infantry Greift an, Infantry Attacks, a detailed study of his First World War engagements, thick with maps, diagrams, and analyses of infiltration tactics. The book attracted military readers, but more importantly, it caught the eye of Adolf Hitler. At the time, Hitler was expanding his control over the Wehrmacht and was drawn to Rommel's emphasis on speed, initiative, and decisive action. By 1937, Rommel was assigned to the War Academy in Potsdam, where he instructed young officers. 2 years later, in September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Rommel, promoted to command Hitler's personal escort battalion, found himself in close proximity to the Führer. This proximity mattered. It was here that Hitler saw not only Rommel's military acumen, but his calm under pressure. The lightning campaigns of 1940 brought Rommel his first great stage in the Second World War. In February, he took command of the 7th Panzer Division. On May 10, 1940, the German invasion of France began. At the Meuse River near Dinant, Rommel's division forced a crossing under heavy fire, pressing forward with such speed that German high command lost track of his position. The 7th became known as the Ghost Division, appearing where least expected, vanishing just as quickly, sowing panic in enemy ranks. By June 21, 1940, his division had reached the Channel coast. In February 1941, Rommel was sent to North Africa to take command of the newly formed Deutsches Afrika Korps, tasked with supporting the faltering Italian forces against the British. On March 24, 1941, he launched his first offensive, retaking El Agheila and pushing eastward. By April, he had besieged Tobruk. With scant supplies and often incomplete intelligence, he maneuvered his forces so deftly that even Prime Minister Winston Churchill acknowledged his skill in the House of Commons. The British press christened him the Desert Fox, a name that would follow him forever. June 21, 1942, marked his greatest triumph in Africa, the fall of Tobruk after the Battle of Gazala. 35,000 Allied prisoners were taken. Hitler rewarded him with promotion to Field Marshal, making him the youngest in German history at 49. But in July, at the First Battle of El Alamein, his advance was halted by General Claude Auchinleck. By October 23, 1942, at the Second Battle of El Alamein, Bernard Montgomery's 8th Army began a decisive counterattack. On November 4th, Rommel was forced into a retreat across Libya. By March 1943, suffering from stomach ailments and exhaustion, Rommel returned to Europe. He served in Italy for several months before, in November 1943, being appointed to command Army Group B in France. His mission was to prepare the Atlantic Wall for the expected Allied invasion. Rommel argued that the panzer divisions should be kept close to the beaches for an immediate counterattack, but Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt preferred to hold them inland. Hitler, indecisive, compromised, weakening both plans. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, Rommel was in Germany celebrating Lucy's birthday. By the time he returned to Normandy on June 7th, the Allies had established firm beachheads. He inspected the defenses, urged Hitler to consider withdrawal to the Seine, but was ignored. Then came July 17, 1944. At approximately 4:30 p.m., Rommel was traveling near St. Foy de Montgomery in his staff car, an open Horch 830 convertible, accompanied by his aide Captain Helmuth Lang and Sergeant Major Holke. An Allied fighter aircraft, possibly flown by South African ace Charlie Fox, spotted the vehicle. Strafing runs ripped through the road. The car veered sharply, then overturned into a ditch. Rommel was thrown violently onto the roadside. Shrapnel and impact fractured his skull in 3 places, severely injuring the left side of his face and damaging the bone around his right eye. Swelling closed the eye almost completely, and for weeks afterward his vision was impaired, sometimes doubling images, sometimes failing to focus entirely on that side. The injury would mark his features permanently. Photographs taken in August show the puffiness and scarring along his cheek and brow. He spent days unconscious, drifting in and out, and was still recuperating when the July 20th plot to assassinate Hitler took place. Although Rommel opposed assassination, believing Hitler should be arrested and tried, his chief of staff, General Hans Speidel, had introduced him to resistance members. Under Gestapo torture, conspirators like Lieutenant Colonel Caesar von Hoffaker named Rommel as a potential post-Hitler leader. By September, Rommel was at home in Herrlingen, recovering slowly but under discreet surveillance. Hitler, wary of executing the beloved field marshal publicly, devised the choice. That would be delivered on October 14. That morning, around 11 a.m., the dark sedan approached his home. By noon, he was dead. The official cause given was complications from his Normandy wounds. On October 18, 1944, his funeral was held in Ulm with full military honors. Hitler sent a wreath. Rundstedt delivered the eulogy. Only after the war did Lucy and Manfred reveal the truth. Rommel's grave in Herrlingen became a quiet place of pilgrimage, visited by former foes and admirers alike. The damage to his right eye, the scars on his face, the final car ride, these details survived in memory because they humanized the Desert Fox, showing not just the strategist, but the man who bore the costs of loyalty, conscience, and the unforgiving machinery of the Reich.